Well, welcome. Wow, this has been quite a thing getting this all together. It's been, we got this together in 3 weeks. So I'm very proud of myself, to do this. This all came out of the amazing success we're getting with the full spectrum protocol. And I'm going to go into that, but I'm going to introduce myself a bit first. But I felt it was important to bring everyone together, and we have all sorts of different people here who are going to explore different aspects. Elsa over here she's actually running a trial for us in Namibia at a school she runs. She's got a spectrum school. So she's giving us an educator's perspective on it. Susanna's got a PhD in something, so she's impressive. Yeah. But she's a wealth of information. And Robin's actually written a book on sort of people on the spectrum or her own children, but I'm sure she'll introduce herself. So we've got sort of insider, outsider perspectives. We've got a bit of everything today. But what I'm going to talk about, and just to be clear, I'm not an expert on the spectrum. My learning curve is like this. I'm learning fast. And my girlfriend's recently diagnosed me as being neurodivergent about 2 weeks ago. I wasn't aware I was, but then I look back on it and it's like, oh, actually, maybe. Okay, that kind of makes sense. And but doesn't everyone like that? So that's been interesting. It's been a new face to take on, a new perspective. But I like to think I'm quite well integrated. But I would just like to tell you a story about how this whole thing really came into form. So when I was 8, I remember waking up every morning in a different mood and thinking, how is it that I can't go to bed in one state and wake up in the same state? And I took an oath to myself. It's like, I swear I will find a way out of this. I swear I will not be a tyrant. I will not be tyrannized by my own mind and my own emotions. And my whole journey has basically been to get to this point, to get to the point where people gain control over their thoughts and their emotions and get to choose what they want to choose, aren't just like thrown into the emotion of anger or irritation or sadness or despair. So I'm going to get into the medicines and how they work into that in a while, but just a bit on me. So I was a homeopathic doctor for 20 years, and then faithful service, I retired myself in order to go into business to start developing a system of medicine which is called Beyond Medicine. Which is loosely based on homeopathy, but I've taken the technology and evolved it. So what I've done is, when you have a substance, you dilute it and you get a frequency. But what I've done is I've amplified the frequency to make much stronger frequencies. So instead of when you drop a stone in the water, you create a ripple, I'm kind of getting a grapefruit because I'm filling in all the spaces in these atoms and I'm throwing into the water, so it creates a much bigger effect. In order that everyone could feel them, because the worst thing that can happen is that nothing can happen when you treat someone. So I wanted something to happen. I wanted people to feel the effects of it, because then they don't come back and say, well, I'm not quite sure if I felt it, or maybe not. That was, for me, is the worst thing. I'd rather have them like, wow, your stuff is really strong. That was a far preferable outcome to me. So, but what I've done with a lot of these substances is I've mixed them together in order to create specific frequencies to work on certain things. Now, I just want to go back to the full spectrum protocol a bit now. It makes up 3 remedies, and we're on our 3rd trial now. We've got about 40 people on our 3rd trial. The first trial, in everyone's bags, there's 50 testimonials, 55 from different people. I've changed the names, I've just put the initials, but just to show you the variance in what's happened. And we've seen improvements in as little as 3 days, continuing for months. And there's one woman who's been on it for 6 months, well, her son, and they had to move out of Johannesburg. They had to move to Clarence because he was too violent and he couldn't deal with the city. Now they took him overseas on holiday, and he was in Cyprus, and he was by the pool by himself. So he's gotten to the point where a lot of the triggers are not really appearing. And then they can live a more normal life, whatever normal is. One uses that word very loosely here. But, I would like to, when I heard the plight of parents on the spectrum, as a single parent myself, my heart went out to all these guys, because parenting is a hectic thing anyway, and to know that at least if my daughter has a meltdown every now and then, that's fine. But if everything is a meltdown, it's just the horror of that was just like, so that's why I developed this. Now, the person who's furthest along on the full spectrum protocol is this guy who's just been on holiday in Cyprus. So we have results to 6 months with him. The second trial in Namibia is about 3/4 of the way through, and we're getting amazing results, but Elsa will talk about that because from an educator's point of view, you'll get to see it from that perspective, because a lot of what we see are just snippets from parents who just see their kids at night. But we had amazing story. The one child just started to speak, said hi to the mother for the first time ever, and like the mother was like, and there were 2 instances of a carer and a bus driver that the child had never spoken to, and all of a sudden they started speaking to the person. So what I want to sort of address here, and this is where it gets slightly more, I don't want to say esoteric, but yeah, but like volition, there's something I've come to understand about people on the spectrum, especially the more extremely autistic children, is that they're in there or they're there somewhere, but they don't actually want to reach out. They're content in themselves, and there's no reason for them to reach out into the world. But what's happening now is that people are seeing the value, these children are seeing the value in social interaction. The one boy started playing with his sister, right? Hadn't played with his sister for a year, 3 days. Oh no, he's playing with his sister again, because he saw there might be value and benefit in actually interacting with other children. And this is huge, because this is not something one can easily quantify. This whole concept of like why people reach out and why they engage. Now, I spoke to someone who said like a neuronormative person should be able to go to a party and be able to handle in like 10 seconds. They should go in there and it's like, okay, a moment of acclimatization and then be fine with it. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. No beers in between, like just to get you into the mood of it. So, but I mean, this is like that extreme, like in terms of how people adapt to situations. So what I'm seeing with this trial is that a lot of the social cues, like the eye contact, the reading the room. There's one woman on this trial, Gillian, she lives with 4 Aspergers kids. And she said they're far better able to read the room, so there's less tension. She said even the cats stop fighting in the house because there's less tension between everyone. And that comes down to people reading the room and saying, oh, I see that this person is trying to indicate to me that they're slightly unhappy with me. What is that about? They're able to pick up on these cues and then modify their behavior or give the appropriate response. Now, I mean, I've racked my brain long and hard about like what's happening here, right? And this is not the final word on it. This at all, in fact, quite the opposite. But the 2 possible theories I've come up with about what's happening here is, the first would be somehow and I'll go into the technology of it in a while, but like this is just what's happening. The neuroplasticity of the brain is becoming more fluid. So people are more able to engage new learning activities. Now, neuroplasticity, for those who might not know about it, is the body's ability to adapt to new things and change and develop and sort of, when we learn a new skill, that's the neuroplasticity coming in. It's allowing us to absorb the new skill and change behavior. Now, there's good and bad aspects to neuroplasticity, like a trauma can be as a result of that, and then people can get stuck in that. But what this is doing, it's shifting the neuroplasticity to the level where people are more open to want to learn, to change, to develop new habits. There was this one child who was, I think this was one of Elsa's ones, but he was like, he would normally do an art activity and then he would feel like, oh, I don't feel like doing this. I'm grumpy. And then he actually checked in with himself and said, actually, I don't feel grumpy. I would expect to feel grumpy in the situation, but when I actually self-reflect and check in on myself, I'm not feeling grumpy. And as a result of that, he was able to do the task without effort, something he would normally kick up his feet against. Another good example of this was Alex, who was supposed to be here today, but she got very sick. Her son actually requested, he's like 18 or 19, actually requested to get a personal trainer, because normally he's at home and couch potato and just stays in his room and plays games. Because his anxiety is so high, she said like 95% anxiety all the time. I was like, wow, that's hectic. But he actually, of his own choice, said to his mother, I want a personal trainer. And then he followed through with it. He actually went to the gym. He actually would go to the gym. And as everyone knows, like as a young male going to the gym, it's a pretty scary environment. Like you got naked men in the gym. It's like wow, it's not designed to really make you feel confident about yourself. It's like if you have any issues, that's where it's gonna flare, you know? That's without even dealing with a woman there, yeah. It's like just from a male perspective. So, but he actually did this and he's handled it and he's carrying on with this. And he's been on it, I think, 3 months, which just shows the neuroplasticity allows new behavior to change. And, because anxiety is such a big part of a lot of everything on the spectrum, and I've actually focused quite extensively on diminishing the anxiety with the Cloud9 in particular, but with the presence as well. Once we take the anxiety down, many things become possible. If anxiety is up, you see a kid and they're anxious and you can't speak to them. It's like, they're like, it's all they see is anxiety. They see it. You see this in younger children and they're in a trauma, and whatever you say to them, it's pointless. You got to bring that anxiety down, and then you can have the conversation. So this is why in the full spectrum protocol, the Cloud9 is there as like a free range, kind of like what Bach flower essences is to that, but this is based on oxytocin, like a homeopathic version of oxytocin. So letting us feel like I'm held, I'm okay. Oh, I'm petting a nice fluffy cat and everything is good, or like I'm under my favorite blanket. Just that feeling, just give it to them, just free. Here we go, just take it, have that feeling, and in that, the anxiety, which would be up here, comes down. Now, this could also be used prophylactically. So if you're going into a situation where a trauma might occur, or it's a deviation from a normal state or process that you normally go through, so like changing environment or a change in schedule or meeting new people. The same person, Alex, said she was having a birthday and the sun came down, and then all these people came, and he was a bit spun out. So he went upstairs, he took his medicine, he took all 3 of them, and then he came back down and he interfaced with everyone for the whole night till 1 o'clock in the morning. He was there chatting to everyone. She said normally he would freak out and she would have to deal with his freakouts the whole night, and they would have trashed her night. But this time he was actually engaged with people because the anxiety was lower. He was more able to read the room. The things that would normally be threatening would not be. I mean, for everyone who doesn't know what PDA is, it's persistent demand aversion, I think. There's pathological demand. Okay, as I said, I'm not an expert on this. It's like, there's so many of these acronyms. It's like, I'm struggling to keep up with them. But anyway, they're like, so they'll push up against whatever gets suggested. She said now she can actually suggest things to him and he'll take it. He won't automatically block it. So this implies a level of greater cognition, greater understanding, greater ability to process whatever's coming in. So that's the one possible reason that this is occurring. Somehow, the neuroplasticity is shifting to a level where they're able to move out of a fixed space into a space where learning can occur, and they actually want learning to occur. And this volition aspect, which I'm just calling that volition, I don't know where that exists in the brain, but somehow we're seeing this consistently and across the board. Kids are reaching out outside of themselves, they're playing with other kids, they're engaging with other kids, they're playing with their siblings. The one, I think this is once again Elsa's child, like actually makes tea for his little brother now. That's part of his reaching out. It's like it's an actual, it's a way of bonding with his siblings. And I mean, this is big. People are actually volunteering to help their parents. So we see a greater level of empathy with people as well. Like normally the parents would be struggling with bags and the kid's like maybe 18, he would just ignore them. Now he's like, oh, do you want help with your bags? They'll actually help them carry the bags inside. So this is part of the reaching out, the empathy, the ability to feel the emotions of others and respond to them with, with an urge to help. And this is really what society is based on. This is what our normal human actions are based on, like give and take. Like, I spoke to this one father, he said normally the one kid, who's not neurodivergent, just looks at the kid with a side eye and the kid will get it and like he'll stop doing what he's doing. So his daughter is not like that at all. It's like he's got to like glare at her like 5 or 6 times until he's fuming and then maybe she'll get it. But he said, what's happening now is like she started to get the social cues. Now, I'm aware this field is massive. The more I dive into it, the more massive it becomes. And it says a lot about the neuronormative brain, which I don't have anyway. But like, well, what's normal anyway? Yeah, but I've just realized it's levels of connection. What I've actually come up with recently, and I am going to go into the full spectrum, is because I realized that with Elsa, once again, mind of information, told me that like 80% of people on the spectrum have ADD or ADHD as well. So I've made something for that specifically. I mean, not only for people on the spectrum, but anyone who has ADD, and that's around focus, and that's been amazing as well. That's called Genesis. We've got that here as well. Just because, when people bring problems to me, I look at them as like, okay, well, what's the problem here? How can we solve this? And make medicines accordingly. So for those of you who don't know, okay, so in the full spectrum, and as I said, we're in the middle of the third trial, or the second and third trial at the moment. So I'll have results on those. I've got the first trial's results in the bag. There's like graphs and like how people responded. But generally, we got about 50% improvement in most things in terms of like engagement, socializing, reduction in stims, anxiety, and then certain things that were higher and certain things were lower. I think from my understanding that the people who are like pre-verbal, there might actually be some brain damage. It might be a lot harder to shift that, because obviously what we're looking at here is a functional change. If there's structure, like if there's a message going from there to there and the bridge is broken, it's going to be tricky. Although, the body, and this is part of neuroplasticity, is finding ways to like shoot almost like neuron messages across and allow like fiber optic cables to occur whereby information passes between these two things. Now, this brings me back to the other thing I think might be happening. So the other thing, and this is just from my basic research with this, is they talk about gray matter and white matter. So now gray matter is where all the information is stored, and it's stored in the brain. And this is a simplification. I'm just doing this for the sake of explaining the basics. But what happens is a lot of neurodivergent people or people on the spectrum have very well developed gray matter. The gray matter is not the problem. They're doing fine on the gray matter stakes, but it's the white matter, which is the stuff in the middle, which is where the messages go across, that somehow seems not to be functioning as well. So if you imagine there's a message here, like I have a thought, and then it needs to get to somewhere else in order for me to act, and then that'll bring about an outcome. Somehow the messages are not getting there for whatever reason. So, but if this is the case, with this, we seem to see improvement in that, which would suggest an improvement in the functionality of the white matter. So like a reorganization of the brain in terms of that. So I'm aware what we're dealing with here is something, I don't want to say beyond the physical, but when we talk about thought and emotion, and this is what these medicines are able to deal with, yes, there might be a place where thought arises, then there's some neurochemistry, some brain chemistry, like I feel anger and then something fires. But before the biochemistry, before there's things shooting across, there is an emotion, right? And where does this come from? Where do thoughts come from? I mean, I'm deviating here, but I mean, it's important because there is a reason I'm addressing this. Because what I've found with these two remedies, and I mean, I've described the Cloud9, which is the one piece. Now, the first one, presence. Now, I had a different version of this, which was slightly stronger, but I've settled on presence because it's more balanced. So what I've been working with a lot is 3 versions of gold. I mean, if you harken back to the old alchemical concept of mind, body, and spirit, they would combine the 3 and they would create an original material. So this is what I've been working with. The liquid gold is something I've created myself. It's a particular version. The solid is from burnt gold. It's a version they make in India. They burn the gold like 9 times to bring about the spirit, if you like, of the gold. And then the physical gold is more the mind. But when you combine them all together, something very interesting happens. You're almost able to send a message to the level where thought and emotion arise. So you're actually you're almost able to whisper to the DNA. I mean, it's an analogy, but when we talk about the mind, it's hard to even describe what's going on here. But what I found, and I'll just tell you what happened when I made this myself. So I'm an empath. I mean, for anyone who isn't an empath, they know exactly what it's like. But I'm a high order empath, which is a pain in the ass, believe me, because everyone else's emotions are your emotions, and it's just a nightmare. Actually, I mean, I'm acclimatized and I can deal with it well. But when I took this, it was like a wall went up, and it's like, wow, someone's pissed off with me, and it doesn't matter. It's not in here. It's over there. And there's a frown over there, but I'm not feeling it in my body, right? So it gave me the choice to engage or not to engage, but also gave me like a shield, a protection. So, what this has been very good with, this presence, is it gives people the option. So imagine the emotion comes at me. Say it's anger. Say it's sadness. Say it's despair. Say it's rage, jealousy, it doesn't matter what it is, but that comes to me. Normally it's like an octopus. It's on my face and it's in my face and in my head and like, rah, and I'm responding. But no, there we get to see the octopus coming, and we have a tennis racket and we just bat it back and we can swat the octopus and say like, hold on, do I want to engage with this? Do I want to play with this? I saw this perfectly when I was coming home and someone had parked in my driveway. And my daughter was there, and she knows this would normally trigger me. And she's like, aren't you going to get pissed off? And I was like, actually, no, I choose not to get pissed off. I'm choosing not to spoil my day because I'm having a good day. And just because someone's there, I'll just park somewhere else. But I was able to, instead of going into this automatic response of anger, which would have been my go-to point, I was able to step back and say, no, I choose not to do this. And this is massive. I take this remedy every day just because it makes my life better. So, I mean, neurodivergent or not, these remedies, anyone can benefit from the protocol because it'll just make your life better. Obviously we see these situations with people more acutely because, the functionality is more obvious. But I mean, when I was reading the neurodivergent things about like can throw a tantrum, it's like, well, can't we all throw a tantrum? If someone pisses up, can't we all go into a rage? Is this like a neurodivergent specific thing? Or is this just like a human thing, a normal thing? Anyway, I'm still grappling with this. As I said, my girlfriend took 8 years to mention to me that I was neurodivergent, which she did about a month ago. I was like, wow, okay, interesting. Yeah. But anyway, once we look at like a normal brain, and I don't even know if that term means anything to anyone, because who has a normal brain? It's like everything is configured in certain ways based on what we need to do. But what I'm looking at here is like, regardless of the level of the brain being impinged upon, in whatever format, for whatever reason. I'm not going into causation. I'm not going into the whys and what happened. Is like, can we improve the functionality of the person, which means a better experience for everyone? Okay. So that was the presence. Now, okay, into the presence. Wow, I hope we can even talk in this. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. So into the presence, I've also added 2 of my remedies, creation and golden spiral. So now, creation is a remedy I've made. It's a separate remedy, but I've included it in this presence because when I made creation, what I was thinking of, like, okay, what does my best day ever look like? Okay, so I want to be open, I want to be playful, I want to be expansive, and I want to be engaged. So let me put in all these different ingredients. It's got like the light of Jupiter, it's got reishi mushrooms, it's got the protea nectar, it's got all these beautiful ingredients. But the feeling was I want to capture this feeling of like best day ever. I want to go out, and I found myself, I started engaging with the cashiers at Woolies or the petrol attendants. I start chatting with them, which I never would have done. I'm too in my head. But now I'm like, I engage with these guys because they're there, they're human, they're in front of me. And, you know, there's a reason to do it. Like, I'm almost pushed out of my comfort zone from like, oh, it's easy to stay in my head. Now it's like, if it's not an effort to make the step there, then why wouldn't you do it? And this almost helps us make the step. And then you're there like, oh, I'm actually enjoying this whole process. So I put this in, you know, in the presence to almost, you know, give an example of what a daily experience can be like. And one of the kids on the trial just kept saying, like, without knowing any of this, kept saying, wow, I'm having my best day ever. But like every day she was saying this, you know, this is my best day ever, every day. It's like, wow, that's great. Without knowing that I'd done this or that it was even in there. But this is what she was feeling, that she was feeling like it was her best day ever. And if we can have every day as our best day ever, like, what can ever be a problem? Because we're all aware that if something starts badly, you know, the chances of it continuing badly are great unless you stop in your tracks or plunge into an ice bath or get in a sauna or smack yourself in the face or change something, you know. The normal processes will continue unless we avert them. And we are creatures of habit. And we are attached to our moods, and our moods run us to the point that we let them. But a lot of it's unconscious and subconscious. And this is what the presence and the victory over thought do to some extent. They make what runs us obvious. So it kind of brings it to the surface. So we can see like, oh, wow, this anger is actually, this is my father, you know, shouting at my mother and me feeling disempowered. And then I got angry because feeling angry is more empowered than feeling disempowered because I couldn't help my mother. And then I'm getting upset with my daughter when she's sick and I can't find the right remedy. So it's like I'm frustrated with myself, so I'm getting angry, which is like, why would I get angry with my daughter because she's sick? I can't find the remedy. Surely that's on me. But it was just such a simple thing, and it just showed it to me. It's like, wow, that's the pattern. That's what you learned as a child. But being able to see it, now every time it comes up, it's like, I know you. I know what you're doing. I've spotted you. I'm not playing that game anymore, right? So self-knowledge is obviously primary always for everyone. And this is what this brings. It brings the subconscious and the unconscious to the surface. Now, as I said, this applies equally to people on the spectrum as to anyone. So then the other ingredient in the presence is the golden spiral. Now, the golden spiral is the Fibonacci sequence. It's, you know, what's in the galaxies and the air, and like it's in everything. Seashells, sunflowers. It's that golden ratio that's basically in us that we're kind of built on. So this is made from, they pass some light through a sculpture, the golden spiral, they capture it in water, and then I amplify that to make it stronger. So what I'm giving back to people when they take that is like, I'm at my perfect ratio in relation to reality. So I'm not struggling. In fact, when people look at the golden ratio, they see it as being more beautiful because it's more in alignment. So buildings built on the golden ratio are more pleasing to the eye. Facial features, if they're more on that golden ratio, are more pleasing to the eye. So I'm just giving this back to people as an example of like, yes, you are in perfect alignment because we're all built on this. It's just a reminder that we're going back to this, as a pattern. And then the third ingredient, I mean, this is all mixed in with the gold, is I got this mix of Amazonian ashes, 12 ashes, which somehow, in conjunction with the gold and these other things, is able to give us this control of the emotions. Now, you have to take it to believe it. And I thought in the beginning, this is too good to be true. Can we actually get control of our emotions? Now, we don't want to suppress our emotions. It's impossible anyway. We wouldn't want to. Our emotions are what make us us, right? But we also don't want to feel obligated to run an emotion unless we actually feel like it. Because so much of our stuff, especially as parents, is triggered by child does something and then we go into an automatic response, and maybe it's inherited from the parents. But if both parties, and we had one person on the second trial, the one that was just finished now, he took it with his son because he realized that he was triggering the son as much as the son was triggering him. So they both came back into balance at the same time. Now they both continue to take it because they realize you can't just shift one piece of the equation. You almost need to shift all the pieces and bring everyone back into balance. The mother didn't take it, interesting, but maybe she was not involved in the whole drama between father and son, and she was, but if we can, and this is what neuroplasticity is about, if we can create a new scenario whereby a new interaction can occur in a de-stressed environment. So we take the pressure off, we put the pieces out and say, okay, well, what would a better interaction look like here for everyone? And let's have this. Let's have a better interaction. We all know what a bad interaction is like. We all know what a flare-up, a tantrum, a nightmare looks like. We know that, right? But if we had a choice, and this is giving us the choice to actually say, well, I choose not to go into this. I choose to have a better interaction, because why wouldn't you? And life is made up of these better interactions, and each time we have a better interaction, our overall experience of the day is just it's a better thing. I mean, one of the people on the trial, her child used to have all these tantrums and meltdowns and anger episodes, gone. She's holding her breath, how long is it going to last? But it's been a month now that he hasn't had any anger meltdown episodes. I don't know, and it's obviously case by case. I mean, I can't say with certainty. And what Gillian, who's on the second trial, showed me, that it's like a graph. It's up and down, and people go up and they go down, and that's to be expected. It improves, but what I learned from her is don't get a bit down if it goes down, because I'm oh, it's all great, but then I get a bad report, and she's no, that's part of it. That's part of this. We zigzag our way back to a cure. We get better. Now, some people are just like that, and some people go up and down. Now, with the full spectrum, the one that's most likely to be confrontational is the victory over thought, the VOT. Because that's dealing with the mind directly, not so much the emotions, but the actual thoughts and the subconscious and unconscious patterning. So that'll tend to bring stuff to the surface. So the key piece behind this victory over thought is once again another tree. It's Nairal, the mother of all plants. It's this incredibly precious and holy tree from the Amazon. There are only a few there. But it was supposed to govern all plant life on Earth. It's really a very special thing. But what it's doing is it's bringing in a reflection to us of, in the same way that the emotions are coming up and coming like this. This is the thoughts. Now, I mean, to talk about thoughts without emotions is a bit weird, but that's why I put them both in. But I wanted people to have, I didn't want to put it all in one bottle because it gets confusing. We want to be able to separate these out, because that's why I often say to people, well, for the softest landing with this, you can just start with the presence and get the emotions a bit under control. Then you can bring in the victory over thought, because that tends to bring in the thoughts, and they're thoughts about oneself as well as thoughts about one's reality. But to talk about thoughts separate from emotions is almost impossible, because like, where does the line sit in this? Like, how does that actually work? And I don't know, but I just thought, well, if we have these two levers, these two vectors, which can work in different ways, then we can control the process. Because I am aware with the spectrum is, I mean, the more I look at it, the more I'm just like, wow. There's a lot, there's a lot to deal with, and I can't say with certainty how it's going to benefit people. What we've seen in like the over, I think like probably now 70, 80 people who've trialed it or are still in the process of trialing with it, I would say probably about 80% have got improvement. Some of them are pre-verbal, so it's harder to say. Some within a couple days, some within a couple weeks. But we're talking fast improvements. We're not talking like, oh, in 6 months, maybe there'll be an improvement. If there's not improvement after a week or two, then maybe you'll get improvement, maybe not. But we can pretty much say that people will start to notice these micro changes, and sometimes not even so micro. Sometimes people are like waking up, like this one daughter grabbed her mother and just said, hi, first time she'd ever spoken. She's like, hi, like I'm here. And the mother could see that she was there. Now, when I was talking to Elsa, she was saying like sometimes the kids are not actually there. They're there physically, but their mind is somewhere else. There's literally somewhere else. It might be out in the playground, but which is fine. I mean, we all have flights of fancy, but we like to think that if we're in the body and we're functioning, we can then interact with people. And I think this is part of the thing that happens. Like people can't, interact with someone because their mind might be somewhere else, literally somewhere else. Like their mind is literally in the garden with the dog and they're not actually in their body. But now they see the value in interacting with people and they actually choose to step out of themselves into the world and begin this interaction. Now, where this goes, I mean, this is a massive journey for us all. We're seeing a lot of this. But I do know that when you get control of thoughts and emotions, and you begin to process the subconscious and unconscious patterning, then we can become truly human, in the sense like sovereign in our own destiny. We can actually choose what we want to do, not like, oh, well, my mother did this or my father did this, so now I'm doing this. It's like, well, where's the paperwork? I didn't see the like, I'm obliged to follow my parents' things out of some sense of fidelity or loyalty. Like, I like to think that my daughter can pursue her own path. I mean, I can help her along the way, but like, I'm not pushing her in any direction. You must be a banker or a lawyer or anything. It's like, you do what you want. This is your life. I'm here to support you. This is kind of what, but when you take that as a parent, but then you give the same talk to yourself, like, okay, I'm here to support you, the remedies in the sense, do what you want, but first become cognizant of what's at stake here and how much we're being run by the past. They say like, I think it's 80 or 90% of our behavior is subconscious and unconscious. So like this tiny fraction of stuff is actually conscious, and the rest is like parents, grandparents, society, race, culture, all of that. We're just running that stuff. And like, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't necessarily sign on for that. I signed on to be me, right? I didn't sign on for everyone else's problems and their traumas and their storylines and their lineages. And like, maybe if we choose, we can take the affiliation with that if we want. But, in the family lineage, there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of horror and there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of guilt, betrayal. You take any timeline far enough back, and every race has pretty much persecuted every other race under the sun across the board. Like the English used to sell Irish slaves. It's like, wow, no wonder they're pissed off. It's like, so. But as I said, if you go far enough back, everyone's persecuted everyone. In Buddhism, they say every person's been your mother, your father, your lover, and the bastard who stabbed you in the back. Which gives another perspective on things. But what we're looking at here is governance, is agency. I learned this word recently, great word. It's like the ability to be us within the environment and to choose. And this is the gift we give to people on the spectrum. It's like, okay, well, you now choose your level of involvement with reality, but choose it from a point of view of like, things are kind of working, things are working the way I want to. I don't necessarily have to melt down now because I know where that goes. And I do believe these kids do know where it goes. They know what happens when they melt down and it turns into this or stims or like freak out. And like, as a parent, I've seen this in my daughter, and like, I guess she's normal. She seems pretty normal, yeah, whatever that means. But she's also, I mean, every kid has meltdowns. That's what happens. She doesn't have them that much anymore. But if she can't find the stuff or the right clothing, or there's something on her horse gear or whatever, she'll have a bit of a meltdown. And like, okay, then it comes to me. But if we can get to the point where they can actually decide, like, look, this is this. I mean, another example from Alex, who was going to talk this afternoon but got sick, was her son, someone gifted her a hamburger. And it was like this fancy hamburger. She didn't look at it. It was in a box. She got home. She opened the hamburger to give it to her son, and it was a bunless burger. So son's expecting the burger, and then it's no bun. And he looks at it, and she said she saw the thinking. And it's like, am I going to melt down now and throw my toys out the cart and freak out? And he's like 19, right? But he loves cars. He said, oh, it's a convertible. So in that moment, he was able to repattern the thinking and choose a better neurological option, which was an option where this whole thing didn't turn into a nightmare. He melted down and the whole dinner experience was like, he was able to choose. And the mother said she was like, holding her breath, like waiting for the meltdown. And the meltdown never came, because he chose to choose not to freak out about it because it was not as disturbing as it could have been or might have been. Yeah. So now, babe, what's the time? How long? What do we got time on? I've got 5 minutes. Okay, perfect. All right, and then we'll have questions. Okay. So I'd just like to talk about Genesis quickly. This new ADD remedy. So now Genesis is made from a Amanita fulva, which is it's an edible Amanita. It's not one of the poisonous ones, but what it does when you amplify it is it has very different aspects. What it does is it allows us to focus without being distracted on repetitive, tedious activities. And I was like, wow, that's quite useful. When we think about it, because this is where people get triggered. And I've spoken to ADD people and they're like, oh, they rush because they don't want to be doing it. They could be doing something better, so they'll rush it and they'll make a mess of it, or they'll feel resentful to the task. But what if we could just be totally engaged with the task? We could just get into it. And I tried this on myself. I made it like, so my daughter eats something and I eat something else because she'll only eat pesto with blah, blah, blah. And I was making some soup for myself. So normally like, I've got to cook 2 meals on the same day. It's like, oh, what a mission, what a hassle. But this time I was like, chop the leeks, chicken, pasta. And then I was like, wow. I was sitting there with 2 cooked meals. And it was like, that didn't feel like an effort at all. I didn't even really notice the passage of time because I was so engaged in it. And this was used in the longhouses in Norway, a similar version of this mushroom, but a more poisonous one. Mine's not poisonous, yeah? It's a safe one, yeah? But they would consume this mushroom in order to perform tasks which would be repetitive and boring because they were in the dark for like 6 months. So they'd be in the dark. It's dark outside. It's like 10 feet of snow. They're in this longhouse. And you got to sew this blanket for like 8 hours and there's nothing else to do. You can't, it's the same family around you. Maybe you drink some tea and eat some whatever. But you have to be able to repetitively focus on one thing to the exclusion of all else. And it's interesting. This is kind of like what Aspergers is. It's like repetitively focusing on that. But with the ADD mind, it's like, it's not that, it's the absolute opposite. So this is almost bringing this in so we can focus without distraction on one thing. And then I put the gold as well, because the gold is the carrier for all of this. If you think of the gold as like this, the ability for the neural network to move into the body. So it's like whatever we add to the gold, it kind of moves it into the cells, into the memory, into the DNA. I mean, it whispers a suggestion to the DNA. I mean, it's the best way I can put it. But so this allows us to. So in this as well, I put 4 runes, 4 of the Norse runes. The rune of beginning, the Freya rune. The rune of completion, Raidu, which is about arriving at your destination. The ice rune, which slows things down because you're moving too fast. And then the sun rune, which is about expansion. So it's like the right ratio of ice and fire, right? So it's not too hot or too cold. The right ratios of these. And then the beginning the task and the finishing the task. Because what I learned from the one ADD person is like, they have a lot of resistance to beginning the task in the first place. And they'll push against their own intention to begin the task, which will stop them from actually being able to engage with the task. So this is the beginning, but it's also the completion of the task. So it's like that feeling of like, oh, I've arrived home, day's work is done. That feeling, combined with the initiating and then the right balance of ice and fire with this mushroom to allow us total focus on that. And I've chucked in creation and golden spiral as well because I thought best day ever alignment. So, but I mean, this is new, and how this interfaces with the full spectrum remains to be seen. I know there are a lot of people out there who are just ADD who aren't necessarily on the spectrum, although apparently ADD is a neurodivergence as well, so technically they are, but I know that, I mean, when you start diving into this whole spectrum story, it just gets bigger and bigger wherever you look. But I mean, what I'm about and what I've always been about is solutions, real solutions that work quickly and people can see right now, not like in a week or 2 weeks or a month. Or someone tells me like the life wave patches work in like 6 months. It's like, I don't have 6 months, who has 6 months, Give it to me in the next couple of days, and if I see it works, I'll take it, So, I mean, this new product, the ADHD one, is called Genesis, and we've got it here. In your bags, I've given you a free bottle of presents, just as a gift, so you can play with that if you haven't taken it. There's also the testimonials from the 3 trials. I've just selected and I've filtered out the names. I've just put abbreviations so you can see how this is examples in real time of the people talking about their experience. So there's that, and then there's the graph or the statistics around the first trial. There'll be more statistics to come as we finish the second and the third trial. But I mean, what this feels like to me is hope, in an area where there hasn't been a lot of hope. It seems like there's been a lot of what the solution that gets given to people is like either heavy sort of chemicals or like a lot of physical therapy and like one-to-one, very labor intensive, and it gets pricey as well, obviously that much therapy. So this is to be used in conjunction with all of this, and obviously proper nutrition and all of the other pieces that are involved in this whole thing. One can't take this in isolation, but I like to think that even if the other bits were not, I mean, like this one kid, the mother was saying, like, all he'll eat is like pie crusts. I was like, wow, geez, I thought my daughter was a bad eater. Just the crust of the pie sometimes. And then he'll have dry instant noodles. It's like, wow. I was like, geez, I feel like a good parent in comparison. No, I'm a good parent. Okay. Time out. Okay, so I think we'll have questions for 15 minutes. Is that the time, yeah? So I'm going to open it for questions for 15 minutes. Anything you want to ask about it? Yep.
How do you actually make remedies?
Okay. Okay, so I start with an original substance, and then in a similar way to the way remedies are made, but if you imagine they're like, when you look at a tree, they're like a single layer. I'm layering and layering and layering the message. So that if you imagine an atoms like this, in a homeopathic remedy, they would have one circle in. I'm filling in all the spaces. So I'm layering it on top with technology I've developed myself. Similar to the whole dilution succussion, but different. It's, the benefit of this is we're actually able to deliver much more powerful messages using things like with the oxytocin. We can get almost the same level of potency as oxytocin without the side effects, because oxytocin, you give too much, you zonk people out, it's too much. So I'm able to take it, strip down the extra stuff, and then amplify it. I mean, it's a whole process, and it's kind of but that's it in an essence. So it's kind of like not the evolution of homeopathy, but a side branch of that technology amplified, and I've explored down that path, and I've done it in order to create substances that generate things, as opposed to just using the like cures like and finding things to do that. Because what I'm in the process of doing is like I'm seeding frequencies into the person. I mean, with the gold, you almost have a living matrix, and you're able to bring these forces in which actually support the process. So, I mean, I've kind of gone off in very different directions, but that's the essence of it. If you imagine like a circle, that then the rings are filled in all the way, so the molecules are quite dense, so we get a much stronger message when you take it, so everyone gets to feel it, yeah? Eh? Doesn't help. Well, I mean, some of it's my proprietorial technology, so I'm not really revealing how I do it, because to be honest, it's too, without understanding it could be dangerous, because you're creating quite powerful things. But I've gone to great lengths to ensure that they're protected, so we get the efficacy and the potency without any potential fallout. But I mean, if I was to release this technology to people would abuse it. They wouldn't understand it, and they would create stuff that would be too strong, because you have to realize, I've been doing this for 20 years, 30 years. So, this comes out of my knowledge of homeopathy and working with water and imprinting memory onto water and then amplifying that. All right? Does that help at all? Okay, go.
I'll make a comment, because that sounds fantastic. I work with kids who supposedly on the spectrum, which has become wider and wider.
Yes.
They very often, their force field, as I always say, is very, very thin. I mean, it's non-existent, and you have to ground them.
Yes.
In their body.
Yes.
Create some sort of force field before they can actually reach out.
Yes.
Reach in and they get that interaction.
Yes.
What you've done that's in essence what we do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like to think if we can enrich and strengthen people so that they're more empowered and strengthened, then their experience of the world is less potentially frightening, because they're less, as you say, less fragile. If we can give them this density, like just that creation remedy, I mean, it changed my life just taking that. I would go out and it's like, wow, this is my day, rock and roll. That was the feeling. I want everyone to have that, because once they've got that, then the chance of, when something goes wrong, the chance of something more going wrong, it can easily go that way. But if we set the mood for an upward trajectory of things going right, then good things often keep happening. But we know, we get out in the car and someone hoots at us and almost have an accident. It's like, and then the next person comes and another person hoots, and then we get into work and we're already angry and pissed off. It's very easy for that to become a negative downward spiral. But what if we were to have a positive upward spiral? That's what I'm trying to engender here by giving people this initial feeling of, it's my day. I've got this, best day ever. Yeah? I'm in my body, yeah. Well, that's a big part, yeah.
Oh, this lady's
Okay.
I just wanted to know, what is the safety take if the children are already on SSRIs? What is safety like if you had to take this in conjunction?
Okay, so I think proceed more cautiously, more slowly. You might want to start with the Cloud9, see how they handle that, and then bring in the presence maybe every second day and watch for any potential interactions. If there's any flare-up, you can obviously slow down the process, maybe give it once a week. What I have seen is people who are on SSRIs or even Ritalin or whatever have chosen willingly to stop their medication because they don't feel like they need it anymore because they're doing so much better. So obviously that's done in concert with your physician, and I don't know how they're going to react to me, but I mean, that's another story. But, you know, it's about the parent and the child and how well they're doing. They must then decide what is best for the child based on that. But if there's any doubt, slow it down, because there could be some potential interaction. But if you stop the remedy, slow it down, that should disappear. You know? And then you have the option to maybe take a half dose of the SSRI or something, but obviously do this in conjunction with your physician. I think once I have enough results, I can actually approach the physician and say, look, this is a technology which can be used in conjunction with. And, you know, I think the plight of kids on the spectrum is for everyone. It's heartbreaking, you know, like that there is so little being offered for these guys, you know. So this is where this comes in as a support, you know, and a path to tread, and a path which is supported everywhere. It's supporting the kids all the way out of wherever they are into whatever, so that they can develop their gifts and bring them to the world.
So you've got a couple of questions.
Can I give you this?
Thank you. Thanks for sharing the test results. What was your sample size for that?
For the first group, okay, it was quite small. We had 20, but only 10 of them actually responded, or 11, right? The second group in Namibia, I think we've got like 20, and the third group I've got 40. Now, I don't always get absolute compliance with everyone in terms of responding at the end of it. Some people drop off or they go away or something happens, but I mean, I can only go with what I get, you know, at the end of it. But so 10, the next one's 20, and the next one's 40. We're about 3/4 of the way through the 21. The 41, we're about halfway through. Yeah, so in about a month, we'll have all the results for all the trials, and then we'll be able to draw bigger graphs and we can see what's been happening. But there's definitely a consistent improvement across the board. Sometimes there's the increase in stims, and then I say, well, okay, just slow it down, take some Cloud9, let it settle. But I'm aware that there is fluctuation up and down. And generally when people stop taking, and they just, you know, it might be the victory over thought, which might be too confrontational for the kids. So I said, slow that down, take the Cloud9 every day, just make it, or twice a day, slow it down, because we don't know how fast they're going through stuff or how quickly they're returning to themselves. So that's not something I can manage. I can just suggest protocols whereby they have the most gentle entry or re-entry. Yeah.
So the other question was around academic performance, because often Ritalin is prescribed to help kids deal with schoolwork
Yes.
and homework. I mean, I think that's a very common application.
Yes.
But I noticed that none of the markers here were indicating around academic.
No. Well,
this
this is why I produced Genesis, you know, because that is like something which would act in a similar way to, it's not on this, it's a recent remedy, right? It's not part of this. I wasn't really focusing on academic improvement, although I do believe, and Elsa maybe will address this in the next talk, because she actually runs a school. She might actually be able to give you more insight into this. But I mean, this is why I developed this new remedy, Genesis, to deal with the fact that kids are struggling at school and their concentration is an issue. I just had to look at, well, what's most important, their mental and emotional well-being or their academic performance. And I went for mental and emotional well-being to stabilize that. And then I can kind of look at the stuff that comes after that in terms of their focus in school. But I didn't, to be honest, I didn't realize it was 80% of the people on the spectrum have ADD or ADHD as well. But now I do. That's why I made this other new remedy. Yeah.
I mean, just bearing in mind that we're in a holiday season now.
As well.
And, you know, what would you recommend in terms of a trial period before going back to school? Because that would be the litmus test, right? To see.
Well, I mean, okay, so on holiday, you know, the kind of ADD stuff, like where they have to focus, is obviously well diminished. They don't have to do much of anything. So yeah, I mean, maybe give it maybe just let them have the holiday and then give it to them when they go back to school, if they just want it for the ADD stuff, like equivalent to what Ritalin would bring. But like, there's no side effects to Genesis. It's like completely without side effects. It's just focus, completion. It's a much more holistic, embodied, I don't know what words you'd even use to describe it, but I've literally looked at the components around it, and I provide something that's not kind of speed, which is what Ritalin is, you know. I mean, yeah, to deal with this. But the initial results from people taking that have been amazing. You know, people who have had issues, you know, focusing are now like, wow, I can actually focus. My brain's working. So I think maybe if you're curious, like give them a week before and then back to school and just see how it goes with that. Yeah.
I can offer a testimonial. In my family, we have two children, one age 13, one age 15, who came to us through adoption. They both have severe ADHD, and the older of them, the 15-year-old, has to use Ritalin to make everyone else's life easier. That's how we explain it to him. And so we decided on an entirely child-led approach. We offered the children the remedies that we had, that I took to the UK with me, which is the pre-formulation of Genesis. And the 15-year-old who has to use Ritalin immediately opened his little mouth up like a little bird and wanted this smoothie, and he took it. And within about a week, we had a single meltdown, and the single meltdown was, I don't know why I have to take the Ritalin. I can feel the chemicals in my body, and I don't like the feeling. And the other muti makes me feel better. And so our response to this was, you still have to get through they've got another 2 more weeks of school after this. You still have to get through school. The Ritalin is for everybody else around you. Do you mind just taking it for them and carry on with the magic muti, we call it in our house? And he thought about it and he said, okay. So what we did is on weekends, he still gets his magic muti. He doesn't take his Ritalin on weekends at all, so that he can start to feel the difference in his body between the two. By the end of my stay, I only got back a week ago, I sat down with him on the last day that I was there and I said, how are you feeling? And he said, I feel like a completely new person. And one of the things that's been really interesting is because of the Ritalin depressing his appetite, he's not growing very well. He's not tall. He's not as tall as his peers. And it's been astonishing to watch what's happened around his eating. Suddenly he will eat everything. He eats whatever is put on his plate, and he engages with us over meals, whereas meals were always really troubling. He would stuff some food in his face. If he ate at all, usually he wouldn't eat. And suddenly now he not only enjoys a meal with everybody, but he sits through the whole meal, and the rest of us are slower eaters than he is. He stays present. He sits at the table. And twice in the 3 weeks that I was with him, he said, I'm feeling stronger. I feel better. I know that I'm eating. I'm going to grow now. So he is making these incredible connections, and none of this is prompted. We didn't say anything at all, except, do you want to take the muti and see what it makes you feel like? So I can attest to a miraculous, literally miraculous change in the one young person that I know of. I can tell you the story of the other one a bit later.
Thanks, me. Yeah. And Genesis is even better now. Yeah, okay.
Just looking at the size of the bottle, it's 10
It's a
mils. I was looking at your shopping list. How long does a bottle last if
It
you're
lasts a
taking
month. Yeah.
5 to 7 drops a day?
5 drops, yeah. It'll last you a month.
A month. Okay.
I mean, the Cloud9 is in a 20 ml bottle, so that obviously will go twice as long, or you can give it twice as often. You give it twice a day. It's designed to be taken more frequently, but that's the Cloud9. The others are all in 10 mils. But yeah, 5 drops. Sometimes people even take 3 drops, you know. Sometimes that's all they need, yeah. But 5 drops will last you a month, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's a very quick question. Have you done any trials, or have people, like elderly people, have the elderly been using this product?
No. Not. Yeah.
Talking like late 70s, like
70s,
80s.
No. You know, what one has to bear in mind with the elderly, like late 70s, 80s, is that functionality is starting to break down. So there are going to be all these age-related things, but the emotional stuff and the mental stuff is still applicable. This will benefit them in terms of their physicality and their regenerative stuff. I mean, it's a slightly different story, but I haven't actually tried it. It's, the sample was mostly kids, say 3 till 22, and then a couple of adults. The results were more dramatic in kids, I must say. But my understanding of that is that sometimes the adults are more well adapted, so they're used to dealing with it. So maybe shifts were not as dramatic or as obvious, whereas with the kids it was more obvious. You could see it more readily.